So what is the perfect budget? There's no one answer for everybody, but today I'm going to give you some guidelines as to what you should be trying to set up for yourselves and why a budget is not handcuffs as much as guideposts for you to achieve financial independence. All right, so welcome back, y'all. I appreciate you being here, and I love talking about budgets. I talk about on this channel that we are interested in saving, budgeting, investing, building a life of abundance, and I've really neglected the budgeting portion of it. And part of the reason is that there's no one answer for what a budget should look like. It's very fluid, and people want, here's the 7 categories, here's where and it ends up so boring. It's all math, right? And it feels like you're, again, handcuffing yourself. But if you change your mentality, a budget is one of the most powerful instruments you can have to protect your future. What I mean by that is people often say, if I have a budget of, say, $400 or $800 for groceries in a month, if I hit that by week 3 in a month, do I suddenly just stop buying groceries? No, of course not. But a little red flag should show up. So the first step of a budget is to see where you are relative to the categories that are important to you. And then secondly is, where do you want to be? And that helps you control your financial future. Now, you can set up as many categories as you want. You can make this as complex or as simple as you want. There's a lot of apps out there, especially like credit card companies, will give you reports of where your spending actually falls. I personally have always done this with a spreadsheet and actually sat down and calculated, pull up a month or 3 months worth of expenditures and broken it down by categories to the point, because I'm such a nerd, okay? I actually used to take my grocery bill and break it down. Meat, fruits and vegetables, prepackaged vegetables, canned vegetables, things like that. Junk food like soda or candy, dairy. I used to break it down by all of that to see where we were spending our money, because if you're buying Cokes and candy, it's less valuable than if you're buying lettuce. Right? Makes sense. You don't have to do that. That was me. But at least use some system that lets you start tracking it based on a variety of categories. You can use a piece of paper for this and a calculator, or your phone. You can use a spreadsheet, whatever you want to do. Just start tracking it. And that's what I recommend you do first, is don't set up an imaginary budget. Track your expenditures. Now, what kind of categories should you use? Well, that really depends, but here's a few. I like to record, number 1, gross income. This is what I would get paid before taxes. Even if you're a salaried employee, it's good to know how much of your taxes are flowing out of your life. So first off, gross income, and number 2, taxes. And then you get a lot of the rest of your expenditures. First, housing. We all have to have somewhere to live. Transportation, which your car payment, maybe your gas. Savings. This should be ranked here. Maybe number 2, maybe even number 1. Pay yourself first. This should be between 10 and 15%. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But you have to have a savings/investing category. Next, medical and insurance. This might be paid out of your paycheck if you're a salary employee, but keep track of that. You want to see how much it is. Utilities, groceries, installment payments. This is your credit card payments and student loans. A clothing, a giving, a gifting, or a tithing, and a discretionary. Now, you'll notice in this category there's no fun. There's no eating out. There's no parties. There's no concerts. It's all kind of wrapped into discretionary. Because the fact of the matter is, you need food to live. You don't need to go to a bar. All right. So I recommend first off is you take the last month or 3 months worth of your expenditures and start breaking them down into these categories. How much is your rent? How much is your house payment? How much do you spend for your transportation? Whether it's car payment, gas, do you ride the train? Do you have a subway where you live? How much are you spending on that? How much are you saving? How much is your medical and house insurance? I would add house insurance here. How much do you spend on your utilities? Your gas, your electric? How much do you spend on your groceries? And like I said, I broke groceries down in a lot of detail originally, but just lump it together. I spent this at the grocery store, right? Your credit cards and your student loan payments. How much do you spend on clothing? How much do you give? How much do you plan to give? That's what's important here. Not just, oh, I gave $5, but I actively plan to give this. And finally, how much did you just kind of spend on fun? Whether it's bars, restaurants, concerts, the symphony, the opera, whatever it happened to be. Once you track all that, how should it be divvied up? And that's really up to each one of us. But the goal here is that the money that flows into your life is finite, right? We all have 24 hours in a day. We all have 7 days a week. We all have 12 months in a year. And we're trading our lives for income. So how much of that income are you putting into savings and investments that build for your future security and a lifestyle of abundance? Tracking this and breaking it down by percentages is what lets you know where you're putting your emphasis on. Where are you spending your money relative to where you think it's important? Personally, your housing should be about 25% or less of your monthly budget. Your transportation should be another 15%. So that's 40% right off the bat. Your take-home pay after taxes should be housing and transportation. Next, you should be putting 10 to 15% into your savings and investment accounts. That's above any matching retirement you have with your job. If you have a 401k through your job and they're matching 3% or 5% or 10%, whatever it happens to be, you should be maximizing that and then have a separate budget for your own IRA, Roth IRA, savings, investments, rainy day fund, right? Medical and insurance should end up being about 10% of your income. Utilities should get to around 7%. Groceries, about 10%. Now, this one's really easy to stress over. I often have. You know, you buy a lot of prepackaged foods when you could make your own dinners. You buy at Whole Foods versus a more affordable. This is a judgment call. If you're spending more than 10%, you're spending too much. You could save a ton. You could economize, but you have to decide whether it's worth it for you. But take it from somewhere else. Take it from housing. Take it from transportation. Take it from your discretionary funds. Don't take it from your savings and investment. That's what matters here. Savings and investment should be a bill you pay at the beginning of the month, just like you pay your car payment, and it should be sent to an investment. So groceries are a big one where it's very easy to economize within limits. Installment payments, credit cards, student loans, things like that. I believe strongly in what Dave Ramsey teaches. Those should be paid down as fast as possible. That frees up this approximately 5 to 6% of your budget into other things, primarily focusing on savings and investments. Clothing should be about 2% of your monthly budget. You might spend more at one part of the year, less at another part of the year. Over a year, it should average about 2%. Giving should be at least 5%. Now, this should be between 5 and 10 if you are religious and you want to tithe. This is 10% in addition to your savings and investments. But at least have something built in there where you're giving it to causes that you care about. And then finally, discretionary should only be about 5%. There's a lot of people out there where 5, 10, 15, 20% of their budget is spent on discretionary, and that's eating out with friends, eating lunch, Starbucks, bars, restaurants, concerts, whatever it happens to be. This is wasted money, and you are robbing your future for a present that's ephemeral. Build your future. Build your investment portfolio. Don't live like a pauper. I'm not saying that. But if you're spending more than 5% on discretionary, then you need to reevaluate your life. You know what? Instead of maybe Tuesday night tacos, maybe we eat at home. You know, instead of Friday food trucks, maybe we ate at home that night. Recognize where you're wasting money, because discretionary, it might give you a lot of joy. It might build your society. It might build your relationship with people. But ultimately, it's wasted because it's not building your future, your savings, your investment, and a long-term goal of having a secure retirement. So if you go through and you track your spending and you determine the percentages, you know, you make $10,000 a month, $4,000 a month, whatever it happens to be, and you spend $2,000 on housing and and it's all out of whack. Now you have information. You can make the decision to straighten things out. I'm going to stop buying Starbucks every day. I'm going to eat out 2 times a week, not 5 times a week. I spent so much money on clothes. I'm going to cut it back a little bit. These kind of decisions will help you free up cash flow to pay off debt and invest for the future. Now, some of them you might be locked into. If your housing is out of whack, if your utilities are out of whack, you may not be able to do anything about it, at least immediately. If your transportation is out of whack, you may not be able to do anything about it immediately, but maybe that means you're buying a car that's just too expensive. Maybe you need to ratchet it down. Maybe the BMW is nice, but a really nice Honda would free up cash for the future. Those are the kind of decisions my wife and I make, and that's why we're closing in on Millionaire. So break it down, track it, see where, wow, I'm spending a lot more than I thought I was going to, and then set up some general guidelines as to where you think your budget should be, and then try to match those. It's not handcuffs. It's not a prison sentence. It is guidelines to raise those red flags to say, my gosh, I spent so much money on groceries, but I'm not putting anything away for the future. You know what? What if I buy my produce and my eggs and my dairy from somewhere else, my canned goods, and put that extra towards my future? The hard thing is that humans, we have trouble with long term. I put an extra $100 or $200 into an investment. It doesn't feel like anything. I could have a lot of fun with that $200. But over years and over decades, it becomes massive amounts of money. And that is what a budget helps you focus on, is the future, and where money right now is just literally flowing through your hands and being wasted. Let me know any questions below. I appreciate your time.